How's everybody doing?
Doing great.
Doing great.
Uncle Chiseneb.
Uncle Cisnell.
I'm going to make a comparison. I'm going to talk about Maat and IFA. Now, how many of you came into African spiritual systems through studying Kemet first? You can go ahead and say something. You ain't got to be shy.
Yep. Kemet first.
All right. So, one of the things that people did at first is they learned about their history. You learn about the African ancestors in the Nile Valley and how they built these structures, these temples. You find these structures and temples to be quite attractive, didn't you? And then as you went on, as time went on, you begin to understand that these temples, right, their structures and everything else were studied and utilized in other parts of the world. Like, for instance, we notice the influence of the ancient Nile Valley civilization spoken about amongst the Greek philosophers, spoken about within the Bible. Out of Egypt have I called my son. It was interesting in the book of Revelation, it talks about Jesus being crucified, or spiritually crucified in Egypt. Why? You know what I'm saying? What is my eye? Balance, harmony, truth, reciprocity, what else? Justice.
Peace.
So to live ma'at was to live in accordance with divine law. Also, being able to connect with universal principles and understand what these universal principles are and how they function in nature. The problem is that we live in a society that doesn't teach you to learn about universal principles. And as a result, you speak this language that's divisive in nature. It causes you to compartmentalize things in ways that are so awkward that it takes something that was obvious and make it confusing when it comes to having a dialogue or discussion. Can you guys please sit down if you're not doing anything? Okay, gotcha. It's just... I turned off, okay, gotcha. When it comes to things of Ma'at, when it comes to dealing with nature, you have to connect with the force of nature. How do you do that? If you're dealing with the forest, if you're dealing with learning medicine, then you go to the forest and you learn medicine, right? You go amongst the trees. If you want to connect with the waters, then you go by the water. You can communicate with the forces of nature by being in tune with nature. These forces of nature will also communicate with you. It's called being in tune. Ashe?
Ashe.
All right. So a lot of times, whenever we get to the point that we are moving in a certain direction, right? In African traditions, you will consult the oracle. And the oracle will tell you what to do, what not to do. So when you look at these ancient wisdom teachers of Kemet, which I believe were also connected to their oracle systems, because he had an oracle system like every other African tradition does today. They did divination. And if you look in some of the literature about Ancient Kemet, they did water gazing. I remember speaking with another brother who had studied immensely in Kemet, and he spoke about a ritual that they'd do where the priests of Amun-Ra would carry the boat of Amun-Ra on their shoulders, and they'll walk in a certain way, and then they'll read the footprints. And by reading the footprint, that was the divination, talking about what needed to be done in order for the kingdom or the community. So when it comes to African tradition, right, they'll consult the oracle, not only to talk about one's destiny, so that they'll be able to align with their destiny, but also if things were going to go well for their crops, what to do, right? Where to grow their crops, when to do certain things, when not to do certain things. Also, they did readings on the life of a child. And you can find this in the papyri as was considered agreeable days and disagreeable days. You'll find all this in the Kemetic literature. Something else that they did in ancient Kemet is when they worshiped the divine, what did they do? What did we talk about earlier? What did they do? That's universal among people of African descent and Africans.
Drumming, dancing.
They did drumming and they did dancing. So, when you look at these 7 principles, they talk about mentalism, correspondence, vibration, polarity, rhythm, cause and effect, and gender. Rhythm. So these were civilizations that deal with rhythm, understanding the cycles of nature, and dealing with the natural cycles of nature, allowing us to be in harmony with cosmic laws and principles. So there's a Kemetic proverb that speaks of the netters, abhorring those who do not keep up with these cosmic cycles. So they deal with sacred times and seasons. Nowadays, you still have something like that going on. They call them holidays, and they're connected to your calendar, right? So when you're dealing with people who is connecting with nature, they're always kept in harmony with sacred times and seasons. Connecting with the ancestors is something else that was common in ancient African tradition. So, let's say you're going to go before your ancestors. What would you do? You bring them the libation. You pour the libation, then you feed them. You find that all on the walls of Kemet as well. So we get caught up on certain things, on locations, phenotypes, and everything else. But you'll discover that there's universal principles that exist among African people that still can be found in existence today. And those who are descendants of Africa still doing these very same things. So if you want to study about ancient Kemet and Nile Valley civilizations, then it makes sense to learn the languages and then to go around those areas and discover what their traditions are to this day. And this is what Egyptologists or fake Egyptologists do not want to do, right? Those who are honest, yes, they'll do so. Even E.A. Wallace Budge admitted that the ancient Egyptian language was an African language, okay? But there's plenty of literature around that. Now, what is Ifa? Ifa is the wisdom of nature. Now, it literally means to mark or to scratch, but it's the wisdom of nature. So by paying attention to the forces of nature, that means that you can get instruction by the forces of nature themselves. And they miniaturize this process in a form called divination. In the Yoruba tradition, it's called Dafa when you're dealing with Ifa, right? So in Ifa, they talk about these 16 patterns of existence. Now, what's interesting is you'll find these 16 patterns throughout Africa. You'll also find that these 16 patterns exist all the way going into India and everything else, where they use these 16 patterns of divination. I call them the codes of the matrix, because you can also tap into these codes to create the change of an outcome of an event. You see what I mean? So by knowing how these cycles work and understanding the energy patterns around them, there's ways that you can manipulate certain forces of nature to bring forth the desired outcome. In Kemet, they had the Netaru. West Africa, Yoruba land, they have the Orishas. Ghanaian tradition, Apasan, and so forth. These forces exist around us and to an extent within us as well. Okay? Everything that's happening out there in the universe is also happening in your body. Within your body, there are volcanic eruptions. In your body, there is winds, there is floods, and everything else. Your bloodstream is actually like the Nile River itself, the happy Nile River. So it's good for you to cleanse your bloodstream from time to time. It's good for you to eat right. It's good for you to live in harmony. Because whenever you are living in harmony, you get a positive outcome. Also, it is good for you to know what your destiny is, and this is why divination is so important. Because you may also build the ladder on the wrong house, and you may be successful in doing this and that and the other, but you're not fulfilled because it was not your purpose. It's verse up, man. I know you guys are listening. Have me think you guys are listening. Feel free to ask questions too.
Can you explain more about water gazing?
Yes. So there are those who will reach mediumistic trance when they may summon a certain spirit and they will gaze into a bucket of water or a bowl of water and they'll have visions. Now there are people who still do this form of scrying to this day. Some Babalaos utilize this form of divination as well when they'll stare into a pail. Now my father was the first person I ever seen do this sort of thing. And he talked about it. He was a hoodoo man and everything else, his people from Louisiana and so forth. And I remember him telling me how he would gaze into a bowl of water and he would see the unfolding of certain events. Now it's not something that I have mastered, but it's something that I'm going to look into myself. But my father was able to see all kind of things happening. And sometimes he used to see things that disturb him too, you know. So I don't want to get too deep into all the things that my father's seen because, you know, I don't want people to get caught up on some of the doomsday prophecies that are out there. Because I also believe that you can change the outcome of an event. I also believe that humanity has somewhat control over its collective destiny as well. Okay?
The collective consciousness?
Yes, and also we can change the outcome of an event collectively. But when you got these people constantly showing you negative things on the news about yourself, you manifest these things because they keep you dwelling on it. You see, so if you're always dwelling on something negative, then you're going to manifest something negative. A lot of this stuff that you see happening in your life is connected to your aura and your consciousness. And since you agree with it, more of it happens. You see what I mean? So you have to learn how to make disagreements with that which is disagreeable so that it does not continue to visit you in your life. Ashe? All right. So, one of the ways in which we will work with the Netaru, or the Orishas, you go on the temple walls, what do? You see that they will make offerings to the Netaru as well. Okay? So nobody just sat around and just visualized stuff. Okay? In these ancient practices, they didn't just sit around and visualize, they did some work. Now, when they would do things like animal sacrifice, they didn't just throw the carcass over there by the tree and leave it. A lot of times, every part of the animal was used for something, including food. Sometimes amulets and charms were used with this animal's body parts. So everything had a purpose. In African tradition, Yoruba tradition, it doesn't believe that you die. You just go through this process where you come back as a descendant. Okay? So death isn't permanent. And eventually we all go back to source. Sometimes you can get into a state that you tap into what I call the collective. There are people who have dreams that they're other people. There are people who go into meditation and have reported feeling like they were in somebody else's body. See, consciousness, it exists through you as your personality, as a reference point of your identity. When you go beyond this physical form, you can actually go beyond your particular reference point. So some years ago, I was doing Qigong, right? And I could sense when somebody had an ailment. I could feel their pain in my body. So I'll go up to this person and I'll send energy to that person. And I'll ask them what was wrong with them and they'll tell me. One person I could tell felt like he had a dislocated shoulder. So I asked him, I said, hey, what happened to your shoulder? He told me, so I sent energy to his shoulder. Localized consciousness. You're localized consciousness. But you're more than that. Only a small percentage of your being is actually seen. there's a lot of things in which you are manifesting and you have not even reached it physically yet. It already started taking place on the subtle plane, and it forms here. You see. So, things that are starting to take place and take shape on earth was something that already was started the process on a more subtle plane. It already took place in heaven before it took place on earth. Hence, as above, so below. Let thy will be done. This is what I call ultra instinct.
Sure.
Okay? Because your will is aligned with divine will to the point that your mind doesn't get in the way anymore. One of the reasons why we are unsuccessful is because we let the lower false self determine what is real and what is unreal. And then there's the real self that is connected to the source. A lot of times when you're connected with source, you have all kinds of hunches, and these hunches be on point and they check out. So, in Ifa tradition, right, you have your Orishas, Isheshe, Lukumi, Santeria, whatever. They talk about Orishas. In the West, you learn about the different Orishas because the pantheon has taken a different shape here, so it can be preserved. So when you go to get a Dilogun divination by a Baba Larisha, Iya Larisha, right, or a Babalao, they're going to tell you which Orishas have been assigned to you by Olodumare. Now, when I was dealing with Kemet, I learned that you can be married to a certain netter, have a marriage with a netter, right? But that netter is to assist you to fulfill your destiny. But all the netters, the different aspects of netter, are just different forms. Netter or netter does not want to be limited and identified with those various forms. Haru is an aspect of netter. Tahuti is an aspect of netter. Aset is an aspect of netter. But they do not comprise the whole. They're aspects. So Nter does not want to be limited in any of those particular forms, because Nter expresses self through all these forms, including you. So when you open up the Perna Haru and Ger, that is the Egyptian book of coming forth by day by night, it says, my soul is divine. Your Ori is a piece of Olodumare, as well as the breath of Olodumare within you called in me. It talks about in one of the Ifa verses where Obatala, Ifa stories where Obatala creates humanity, right? Shapes humanity out of clay, and it's Olodumare that places breath into these figures and brings them to life. And you discover that this story is quite universal. One good thing for you to do is breathe. Why? Because breath is life. Even the deceased, when they're going through the process of death, when it goes through the process of death, they're taking an ankh, and you put the ankh up to their nose, and this brings the dead or the deceased to life, to live again, to breathe again in the afterlife. Breath is important. There's also what is called the chapter of sniffing the air. Breath is important. Also, one of the ways that would summon people to come to the temples was burning certain types of incense. Incense was very sacred in Ancient Kemet. And it was used as not just an offering, but a way to summon not just the Netaru, but the people to come to the temples. And that's how they knew it was time to be a part of the festivals and give offerings to the Netaru. You follow?
Sure.
Tracking? All right. So, when it comes to a lot of surviving traditions, one thing that's very common is the purpose of working with the ancestors and calling upon those whose names are worth mentioning. That is, those who had character, those who did great things in society. They would, in Kemet, become what is known as an Osir, or Osiris, if you may. Osiris represents the first mummy. This mummy represented a person who did such great things that they were placed in the book of life to be remembered, so that water would be poured out for their ka. Food would be offered for their ka. We still do that today in Orisha practice, Vodun, Palo, and not just African traditions. You'll find this in Native American spiritual systems too. When I went to a sweat lodge not too long ago, I was amazed at some of the similarities that I seen between the Lakota way and African practices. Okay? So for those who have been to that sweat lodge, I would advise you to go again, or at some point in time, pay attention to the similarities.
For sure.
Because indigenous people around the world have this relationship with the earth. There's nothing wrong with astrology, but you also gotta have a connection with the planet that's closest to you. Okay? That's the planet in which we live upon. Another thing in African tradition is a connection with the plant kingdom. If you deal with Asar, or Seer, he deals with green things and things that grow, because these represent life. Around the time of the flooding of the Nile, that guarantees the minerals are going to come up and it's going to be able to grow more food for the crops. Osir is known as the Lord of green things. And plus, Kemet, as well as the Yoruba tradition, were both dealing with agriculture. Agriculture is a discipline in which you have to reconnect, or should I say connect with those sacred cycles and seasons. Right? If you don't, what do you think is going to happen? You're going to miss out on the crops. You're not going to harvest things on time. You're not going to have planted the seeds in time. You got to be in harmony. And you got to also pay attention to cycles. The Kemetic tradition, it deals with cyclical movements of existence, not just linear. So, there's no belief in an absolute demise of your spirit. But there's always some kind of recycling. There's always going to be a you in one form or the other. Okay? Because what are you? What is your consciousness? These physical forms are just vehicles in which we express ourselves through. But your energy, your consciousness, that cannot be destroyed, only transformed. Capra, capre, capru. The becomings of becomings, which is yet to become, or which is still becoming. So there had to have been something that was set in motion at some point in time for you to become what you are today. But energy is always moving some places. It's going to continue to grow. Things break down, and then they regenerate. Then they break down again, then they regenerate. It's an ongoing cycle. This body gets too old, you're not going to be able to use it no more. So the Yoruba tradition says that you got to shed this body when it becomes useless, and you get a new one. Sounds familiar? The Kemetic tradition that speaks of one living for millions of years, eventually becoming a star. See, becoming a star, that didn't begin with Hollywood. It goes all the way back to your ancestors. Yoruba have it too. They talk about Osine, it talks about the stars. And the spirits being in the form of stars coming to earth. All that. We still have it. We never lost it. And just like when I showed you earlier, we talked about rain shout. Brother Amun explained that it's still the same thing, still ceremonies. Just the language, the style in which we speak has changed. But the ceremonies are still there. The way in which we conduct the energy is still there. So when something separates, it comes back together somewhere else. The way we see mathematics, we see plus and minus. We see something divide and it multiplies, like the way your cells work. You started off a single cell and then it kept dividing and multiplying. Math, divine mathematics, is how the universe works. Maat and IFA. Divine mathematics is how the universe works. Therefore, it's good for us to study and learn mathematics. There's nothing wrong with learning mathematics. There's nothing wrong with exploring physics, nature, the Commission form of spirituality. There was a science to it as well. They didn't separate these things the way we do today, because they saw everything being connected to Netter. If you had to go to the eye doctor, then you can best believe that Netter was praised. Some form of Netter was praised. When the sun is rising, Ra is being praised. Water, we praise water. So then you got the Orishas and you got the Yoruba Oriki, where these things around you are being praised. They call it praise poetry. And if you want to charge up your environment, you praise everything in your environment. You praise the floor, you praise the walls, you praise the ceilings, you praise yourself. It's not looked upon as being arrogant to understand that you are connected with the divine that expresses itself in many different ways. See, a lot of us is caught up on oneness because you've been taught that this is monotheism. But in a Kemetic way of viewing things, it's allness, not just oneness, it's allness. So we've been miseducated to see things in sections and parts, and we've been also taught to take things that don't go together and put those together without seeing how one particular thing fits in with the whole and how it affects everything else. That's why they say that your universe in which you live in is a holographic universe, because every part contains the what?
Whole.
Say it with some conviction. The what?
The whole.
All right. You guys getting sleepy on me or what? Hope not. Hope I'm not putting you to sleep up in here. If I am, let me know. We get the tambourines or something. All right. So as far as being able to experience the other side, a lot of us have had experiences with the other side. We don't talk about them because people will tell you that you're crazy or that you're nuts. A lot of you have had dreams of having out-of-body experiences, sleep paralysis, which they call that epilepsy of the temporal lobe. But here's the thing. The interesting thing about sleep paralysis is that even when you're in that state, you're reported to be able to see around the room and everything in the room. How's that? Because something else within you is awake. It doesn't necessarily mean that there's a witch riding your back. Now, there has been times when people have got jumped on by astral entities, right? We'll get into that later. But when you're having sleep paralysis, it does not mean that you are being attacked by a witch. It does not necessarily mean that someone is doing a spell on you. It means that one part of you cannot move because it's sleep. Your physical body is sleep. Your astral body is not. You let your physical body go completely to sleep. Just agree with it going to sleep, and then that's when you do astral travel. That's when you astral travel. Let yourself go completely to sleep. I should be charging people like that. Charging. Okay, everybody, that's $1,000. Next time this happens to you, go to sleep. Next time you find that you cannot move, go to sleep. Completely to sleep. And then you'll have what is called an out-of-body experience. Okay? What you want to do is that you also want to clean yourself up. You want to clean up your thoughts so that you don't get attacked by astral entities. Because a lot of times these astral entities, they're attached to us either because we have lusty thoughts or we're always focusing on things that are negative and stuff like that. Sometimes it's good for you to take a salt bath and wash that crap off of you. Wash it off of your aura. Okay? Deja vu. Deja vu shows and proves that you have the ability to time travel. Actually, deja vu was identified with epilepsy of the temporal lobe. Pardon me. Deja vu You're in the past, present, and future. Sometimes, in a severe case of deja vu, you can actually semi-predict what's going to be said next and done next. A lot of people report having deja vu. It's like, oh, I've been here this before. Yes, you have. Why? Because spirit time travels. It's not limited to time and space like your physical body is, or appears to be. Okay? Spirit is not limited to time and space. So yes, you're catching up to where your spirit has been. You are energy slowed down and crystallized in your physical form. Your physical form is energy that's slowed down and crystallized. And if you was to blow you up or shrink ourselves to the size of an ant, you would look like a stack of bubbles because you're not even solid. You just appear to be solid. You're not solid. There's empty space between your atoms. And yet you still turn out to be 14,000 pounds of pressure per square inch, holding you together. You see the paradox of your existence. Things that appear to be one thing is not necessarily what you think they are. You see, even your separation, even your identities, all of these things are just expression of allness. And yes, you can be a part of that allness. All you have to do is remember. So when you remember, that means you're bringing your separate parts back together. True that? So, when you change the way you think, you change the way you feel about certain things, you will have a different outcome throughout your life and throughout your day. When you constantly dwell on things that are productive, then you will notice that productive things are visited upon you. When you're constantly dwelling on things that are unproductive, then you will have that sort of thing visited upon you. If somebody is coming around you and you feel that they should go, then tell them, look, I can't have you around me because there's things that I got to do. You have to make the agreement that it's time for us to do something else. You have to depart because I can't have you around me. I got things I got to do. But if you don't tell that person to go, they're going to stick around. Right? Okay. So you have to let it be known. We teach people how to treat us. You also teach the universe how to treat you too. Besides, you're part of the universe. So, as far as us as being a people, and those of African descent, those of us who identify with being indigenous, we're protectors of this planet. Be the protector of your world. Be the protector of the planet. That means that you live in truth, balance, and harmony with not just yourself, but with the environment. You know, unfortunately, a lot of us allow ourselves to constantly be railroaded away from our destiny because we forget. Then we become disassociated with ourselves, disassociated with our environment. Next thing you know, everything in your environment appears to be hostile to you. When you go out into the wooded areas, there are negative ions. You go out near the water, there are negative ions. You go up to mountain peaks, there's negative ions. What's going on in this environment? Why are you always tired, sick? People suck up the energy. And because of the technology that we have around us, we find ourselves bombarded with positive ions. Positive ions actually tire you out. Negative ions gives you energy. That's that prana that you're looking for. I welcome a thunderstorm. Kabi Shango. I welcome a thunderstorm. Why? What happens after a thunderstorm? The atmosphere is charged with negative ions. See, we've been taught to see these things as negative. But when you understand, in the Kemetic verse, it says there is no progress without strife. So therefore, you have to strive. You may have to go through what appears to be suffering for a minute in order for you to achieve a higher
Sure.
level of being
Exactly.
to achieve your goal. So yes, you're not on this earth to live in this My Little Pony world where there's a whole bunch of marshmallows and everything, unicorns and rainbows. You're here to go through an experience. You have to deal with the bitter and the sweet. But in order for you to accept, not only enjoy the sweet and appreciate the sweet, what do you have to taste first? Or what do you have to taste in order to appreciate that which is sweet? Bitterness. You got to go through a little bit of bitterness so you can appreciate the sweetness of life.
You make me want to buy some cookies, man.
Yeah.
I've been wanting to stay away from sugar lately, man. I'm trying it, bro.
Well, with the sacrifice twists and turns a little bit.
And
So therefore, you may have to sacrifice the desire to eat sugar if you want to be healthy and taste the sweetness of health.
It's funny, when I was younger, I used to didn't like bitter stuff, but then when you get older, you learn that the bitter stuff is good for you. More better for you than the sweet stuff. So you start liking the bitter stuff.
Bitter
I don't know, it's
stuff,
like a balance,
bitter stuff is good for your liver.
Yeah.
So bitter food is good. Bitter vegetables and stuff like that, astringent, these are all good for your liver. See?
Mhm.
A lot of times when you have anger, it affects the liver. Anger is an emotion that sticks with your liver.
Yeah.
A lot of times if you're dealing with depression, you're dealing with issues going on with your lungs. So you call these organs.
Yeah.
They're organs because they all deal with musical notes. I learned this in Chinese medicine. In Kemet, and I think it was Dr. Kaba in Hidden Colors where he talked about how they utilized the music from a 7-string instrument that connected with the organs of your body and healed you. So the ancient Kemetians deal with sound. Do, re, mi, fa, mi, a, bi, fa. You chant your rikis, you're basically doing tones. These ancestral tones are activating aspects of your memory, your genetic memory, going all the way back to the beginning. People are like, well, why would I want to learn these tones and frequencies? Because it's connecting with your genetic memory. Because genetically you remember these tones and frequencies that your ancestors utilized in their languages. So nothing is truly forgotten. You can always tap into these things through the Akashic Records, which is linked to your DNA. And your DNA, just like the universe, is voice activated. Your DNA is voice activated. The universe is voice activated, so you pray out loud. Be careful what you tell yourself, because you can hex yourself. Ikameji. Be careful what you say to yourself. You can hex yourself. Say positive things about yourself. Don't even joke badly about yourself. Don't even hit yourself upside the head and talk about what a failure you think you are because you missed the light. Don't do any of that. Okay? Because you curse yourself if you self-hex, if you don't say right things about yourself. And the thing about it, we've been taught to be hypercritical about ourselves because this is what society wants you to do and tell you that you're not good enough and get you to blame yourself for not being a consumer in this economy where you're constantly spending money on bullshit.
True that.
Am I right?
True that. Yeah.
All right. So they constantly got you spending money on bullshit, right? But it's up to you, though. Hey, if that's what you want to do, that's how you want to live your life, that's you. It's your personal choice and destiny. But trying to keep up with the Joneses and getting all depressed because of it, because you done made an agreement that you're not good enough because somebody else who's selling to you told you that you need to buy their crap. You see what I mean? You have made yourself a slave of somebody else's desires. So you're going to work on a 24-hour job and everything else. Now you're working for the things that you want, right? You're also working for the things that you need. But when you get the resources, then you have to use those resources in ways that are going to be beneficial. But we are given choices. To a degree, you do have free will. But there are certain things that you cannot control. Okay? You wasn't able to control where you were born, the things and agreements that you made already, and your parents and everything else. You can't change that, in other words. It is what it is. You were born in Seattle, you were born in Tacoma, you were born somewhere in the state of Washington. You can't change that, okay? But you can change the outcome of an event. because there's variables. And so when you do divination, which is dealing with probability, right? You see the outcome of a possible event. And you're told that, okay, if I do this and the other, I can either avoid this or I can soften the blow of what's coming. Or I can get these blessings over here that's supposed to be coming to me. But if I do not do what I'm told and instructed, then I'll let these blessings go right on by. A lot of times when you go to divination, a lot of times the diviners send you stuff that you already know. Basically confirming. What I discovered is that a lot of people, they just want confirmation. The problem is that sometimes they don't get the confirmation that they're looking for. So they decide that they're going to go and get divination from somebody else, hoping that they're going to hear what they want to hear. That's not what divination is for. There's a Kemetic proverb that says, do not seek the advice of Nether or the advice of God, only to reject it. There are people who claim that they want advice. I've had people call me up after they've got divination, and they say they have the same problem. I asked, well, did you do what I instructed you to do? Did you do what Ifa told you to do? They'll say, well, I'm getting to it. Okay, well, don't call me back until you do. I just don't have time to be counseled. I don't have time for that. I'm sorry. I'm a really busy man. I got shit to do. So, you know, when you come to me, you want the help, you get the advice. This advice is not coming from me. I'm just the messenger of a higher intelligence. And I'm delivering the message for you so that you can go ahead and take care of business. You came to me so that I can go to source and bring the message to you. That's how that works. Now, each and every one of us also have this ability to tap into source from time to time. Okay? It's just that this is where I have expertise.
Hey.
I just happen to have expertise in that. But our destiny is that we all should gain expertise. You know what I'm saying?
True that.
Everybody sit up.
You said sit up or stand up.
Sit up. Breathe. Easy. Be good for you to have your feet flat. Breathe. Just breathe. Let the energy circulate. Breathing in through the nose, out the mouth. When you're doing breath control, never breathe in through the mouth. Always breathe in through the nose and out the mouth. Get the oxygen to move to your brain. Get the oxygen to go to your blood. Charge yourself up with the breath. When you first wake up in the morning, activate your body. Wake your body up. Your body's alive. Sometimes you need to wake it up. So what do I do? Okay? Your body's like a switchboard. Sometimes you got to get the juices flowing. You got to get the energy in your body circulating. Activate it. See what I mean? Your body is the vessel for your spirit. But sometimes your body can get tired. So this is when it comes to like yoga, Tai Chi, Qigong. Because as the time goes on throughout the day, you start to draw up. So this is when your energy circulation or your central core becomes misaligned. So that's why you do Qigong, that's why you do yoga, that's why it's good for you to go out in nature and connect with the woods, connect with the mountains, connect with the lakes, connect with the streams, connect with the spirits of nature. Do Qigong in these areas. Listen to some music, listen to some drums and dance. Wake yourself up. In Japan, there's a such thing called forest bathing. Where you go into the forest and you literally spend time in the woods and you let the trees heal you. Being in the woods and being in the forest has a really good healing effect on your mind and on your body, and it's good for your mental health. Sometimes it's good for you to take your shoes off and hug a tree. stand next to the tree and feel the energy from the tree and send the negative energy, and you hold the tree, you touch the tree, you let the negative energy come out your hands and let the tree absorb it. Or you can also circulate the energy of the tree from the ground by the roots and sending the energy into the tree. You're circulating the energy, the tree, and you're feeding off the tree, and the tree is feeding off you. And that's how you get this connection with nature. Trees, spirit of the tree, spirit of the forest. There's an Orisha called Osayen, with a person who, let's say they want to be an Osayen, a person who is an expert in herbs and leaves. They go in the forest and they learn how to communicate with the plants, so they can get the leaves and use those leaves for medicinal purposes as well as ritual purposes. Your grandma and grandpa probably understood how to work with leaves, plants, and herbs, but then you decided to throw away all the grandma's remedies and just stick with allopathic medicine because you thought you were progressing. I'm not saying don't get professional help from a hospital if you have to. What I'm saying is that go and get that connection with the woods and the forest again, and get the herbs, the herbalism. Connect with the trees, connect with the plants. Connect with the wisdom of nature and let nature guide you. This is how you bring back balance. Maat. Right? Okay. This is when you're working with those orishas. This is where you're working with those netaru. Now, I'm not saying that you're setting up an altar or you got a pot or anything like that. I'm just saying that these orishas are forces of nature, and they're all around you. Different pantheons recognize them with different names or see them as different entities. But these are the same forces of nature that you're gaining harmony with by connecting to. You see, spend some time in these areas and you connect with these spirits and they become a part of your life. Remember, you're tuning into what is called a holographic universe. Wherever you go and where you spend the most time at, you're getting downloads in that particular environment, in that particular area, and you're taking on the power of those elements if they are compatible with your constitution. Some people are meant to be more in forest areas. Some people are meant to be more in mountain areas. Some people do better around water. It depends on your constitution and your destiny. Not everybody is the same. Okay? We all look different. We're here to each sound our own personal harmonic note in the universe. So therefore, you have to do things according to your destiny. That's why it says, man, know thyself. Man and woman, know thyself. Know yourself. Kemetic proverb says, know yourself. Your body is the temple of the divine. This is why it says, know thyself. Hey, if you're eating something and it doesn't make you feel good, why continue to eat it? Why do we do that? Because you're trying to impress auntie? She baked the cake, but there's something in the cake that's not good for you. Why are you still eating it? Even a dog has enough sense to eat grass when it's not feeling well. Dogs don't normally eat grass. Okay? When a dog's not feeling well, that dog eats grass. Animals have sense enough to know that there's something healing about that grass. You want to get that grass in its system. If your body is telling you to fast, I've heard people say your feet are cold, you got a sickness, you got a flu, they're telling you to eat. Your body is telling you to fast. Maybe you need to listen to your body. Your body is telling you not to eat right now because it's trying to purge and get rid of something. Shoot, we get to the point we start questioning nature, we start questioning God, you know. Then they tell you some bullshit and you listen to it. Then you throw away everything that's supposed to be good. See, have you noticed? They don't never try to kill you. If there's something going on with the body, they have you cut it off and throw it in the trash. You know? But a lot of things that happen, like cancers, growths, and everything else, it's because you're exposed to things like carcinogens. Or it could even be the electric fence that your relatives live close to. Why everybody is coming down with some type of cancer in that house. Maybe if you take down the electric fence, they may change some things. Maybe if you're not asleep, but your feet exposed to the color TV set, maybe you will not feel as sick because the bottom of your feet is absorbing that radiation and bringing it into your body. Maat is balance, truth, harmony, justice, reciprocity. Okay? It is the way.
Say.
But how do you obtain this balance? Then you have to know what unbalance is here. But then again, in order to find yourself, you must first lose yourself. So we are here on this amazing journey of self-discovery. It says in the IFA tradition that when you're first born, you forgot about the agreement that you made with Olodumare and the ancestors before you came to earth due to the trauma of even being born. So therefore, you have to remember. That's why one goes to the diviner. So the diviner can have to remember what their destiny is. Sometimes people come across this memory on their own. The thing about it is that you have to remember who you are. Because in the physical form, you suffer from a collective amnesia. Okay? But at the same time, if you are all knowing, what's the purpose? So therefore, you have to individuate and become a being that has to make discoveries. You're here to make discoveries. Make discoveries. Learn. They made learning boring in school, I know.